Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the Unlimited Potential podcast. Today we're going to dive into a new series we're starting called Sports and Impact. Just trying to connect people within the sporting world and share their stories and hopefully some life lessons along the way, and where people can just draw some inspiration. Anyways, we'll dive right into it. Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah, just like kind of the why and how on why we wanted to start this series called Sports and Impact. It came down, like I said, it came down to just sharing the stories of those who kind of paved the way for us while we were playing or coaching or whatever it might be. And that just kind of helped us develop as high quality individuals. And we're hoping to, share those stories. So again, people can draw that inspiration. People can learn from those stories. And hopefully we can teach others the importance of sport and movement, of play in a society to help with a lot of things. Obesity is obviously a big thing. The more you move, the better your quality of life is gonna be. Depression, the mental health aspects of sport, and how that kind of forged things, for me at least. And I don't know, a bunch of other people have kind of dealt with that. Life lessons that they've learned through sports. So hopefully, bear with me. This is the first time me doing this. So, the show today, like I said, it's going to be geared around bringing people in the sporting world together and just sharing those stories. So today, I'm kind of going to dive into just kind of the four main themes that we're going to be structuring things around. I don't want to make this like a scripted thing. I want it to be structured, but there's a difference between structured and scripted. I was talking to a couple of friends of mine and athletes and coaches that I've talked to about, we want to make sure everything's kind of flow state. We're not really going to be scripting it to a T. There's some questions that we're going to kind of theme this around. But essentially what I'm going to be doing is just kind of going through those questions and kind of, hosting it for myself, asking these questions, giving you guys a little bit of background into my family, where I grew up and how I kind of got to where I am today. Today I'm a strength conditioning coach by trade. I work at St. Andrews College and kind of work for myself as well, on more so on an online perspective, working with athletes that have come to me in the past, looking to get better. And that's just kind of my niche right now. It's kind of football, hockey. That's where my expertise kind of lies in terms of the playing perspective for football, rugby. I played rugby in high school, basketball as well, and my family's really heavily involved in basketball and rugby now. So those are my kind of backgrounds into the sports that I've been involved in. But we're going to dive it right back. The first kind of question I'm going to be asking the people who are going to be on as well is just kind of like letting us know who you are. So when it comes to me and my background, I grew up in a small town called Alliston. It's just about an hour north of the GTA. Grew up there until I was 12, and that's when I moved to Toronto. But in those early years of my childhood, I was exposed to sport, mostly through school. My dad put me in soccer when I was really young. So that was the first sport. That was the first sport that I was exposed to. I think it was 9 or 10 years old. But family life for me growing up wasn't really the best, I guess. It definitely was a struggle from time to time, and everybody deals with their own struggles. But I'm a big believer in like there's always beauty in the struggle as long as you're looking for it. Growing up, my mom and dad split when I was 10 years old. They kind of went their separate ways. Still lived in the same town, but me and my younger sister, we stayed with my mom. And it was tough. Like, our home situation wasn't really solidified. We were kind of moving from place to place, space from an apartment here, units of a house there, just trying to like make ends meet. I remember, at a young age, like seeing marks on our boxes from, our cereal boxes, because my mom had to do whatever she could to just kind of make ends meet and getting things from the food bank or other struggles like that. So that kind of, put this. I had a hard time with my identity when I was a kid because I didn't really have a solid family background to fall back on. So that was kind of tough growing up. But sports was that outlet for me, right? I was able to kind of be myself. I was able to, express myself playing sports. Like I said, the first sport I was involved in was soccer, and I really enjoyed it because I remember playing defense. I think it was, sweeper, and I just loved running in open space. Being able to be relied on to come back and make plays in that sense. So I remember at a young age, I was pretty fast at a young age, so that kind of helped, obviously, in soccer. And from a defense perspective, like, you can always get back, and they can, the coaches kind of relied on me to be the last line of defense. But And then I remember in grade 4 was the first time I started like getting into track and field, and that's when I love track and field. I love the jumps. I love I even loved at that time in grade 4. I don't remember if we did shot put, but high jump, triple jump, long jump, and believe it or not, I was a good long distance runner. 1500s, 800s. Obviously, when you're a kid, you just kind of you do whatever, right? But the sprints the sprints and the jumps were definitely where my passion was at. So I remember, going on those days were my favorite days in elementary school, and I'm sure a lot of people can agree, man. Those were days that you came in excited and you were competing against everybody, and there was that level of competitiveness that just really pushed me to higher limits for sure. So yeah, and then I remember also in elementary school getting exposed to flag football. We had like an intramural flag football teams, and when they went, I remember it was all the CFL teams. That's where my love of CFL comes from. I remember the first team I was on, like out of those 8 teams, or I think it was 8 or 9 at the time, was the Alouettes. So I remember my teacher Chris Rappin, or Mr. Rappin, he kind of got that all involved, or got us all involved in that, and it was kind of like a feeder system for him because we had like a grade 6, 7, and 8 flag football team, and I remember in grade 5 trying out for we had the opportunity if you were good enough to try out for the team in grade 5, and I made it, so I was pretty happy about that, pretty stoked. But at that time, like besides sports, at that time my family life was going through a lot. I didn't really have much of a relationship with my father growing up. I mean, kind of out of his control and out of my control. Our second party, my mom's partner at the time, just really didn't have a good relationship with him, and he kind of controlled the environment that I was in and my sister was in, and it was tough because like once I started getting older and I started still using sports as an outlet, it was kind of taken away from me in a sense where, like I said, that my mom's partner at the time, he controlled a lot of the environment about what happened. I don't, to this day, I don't know what it was. I don't know whether it was just a control aspect for him. He just wanted to always be in power. But I remember him not letting me play flag football in grade 6. It was a struggle for me to get involved in flag football in grade 7. It was typically just practices, and then you go to a 1-day tournament or a 2-day tournament. But it was still, there was something about his pride or ego that just didn't allow me to be myself. So I was struggling obviously with identity crisis at that point because you don't really like I said, sports was my outlet. So when I wasn't allowed to express myself through sport, or it was taken away from me outside of my control, it really was tough for me to kind of get over that. But when I was 12, I ended up moving to Toronto, and I struggled with my identity in terms of my friendships. Like I didn't want to move to Toronto at that time. Obviously, you're a 12-year-old kid. You want to still be with your friends, and you're getting ready. Like I was going into grade 8, so then one more year of elementary school, then you're going to high school, and you're thinking about. At that time, I was thinking about high school football. I was thinking about being with my friends and just kind of living life. But it was all kind of uprooted, and for the better now. Obviously, like being in Toronto, I love my city. There's no other place I'd rather be. But when we moved here, it was definitely like a culture shock because. Growing up in a small town, there wasn't a lot of diversity. So I came here and just meet a lot of new people, and I didn't really know what to expect from the city itself. And again, we were still struggling with that that home life. Me and my sister, we got along, but we didn't have a real like role model in the home at a young age. So you find certain ways to lash out, whether it's just not listening or just rebelling in your own way. And that's kind of like what started happening to me when I was in like grade 8, grade 9, grade 10, because again, like I still was not given that opportunity to play. Like basketball was kind of my first love, and then when we moved to Toronto, I met my best friend Nadoon, and that's all we did, man. That's all we did in the neighborhood was play ball. And again, I was still under that controlling aspect where, like I said, my mom's partner, he just always wanted to be in control of the environment. So I wasn't spending all the time that I wish I could have out on the court playing basketball. But it certainly helped me develop relationships, friendships when I first moved there. So again, sport is. It gave me that opportunity to meet people, to build relationships as well at a young age. And, those relationships still stand today. Nadoon's my best friend. We still touch base as much as we can. Obviously, we're busy people, but Without basketball, I wouldn't have met him, wouldn't have met another good friend of mine, John Tabakis. All those guys kind of had an influence on how I coach and who I am today. So it was tough. Like grade 8, I didn't get to play on the team because again, it was out of my control. Struggled to try to fight for that in grade 8 or grade 9, and I was able to play in grade 9. And we had an amazing team. Bonds on those teams. Again, the friendships that I built on that with Nadoon, John, Timmy, all these guys, right? That's who. Those are the relationships that and how important. As much as we can. Obviously, we're busy people, but without basketball, I wouldn't have met him, wouldn't have met another good friend of mine, John Tabakis. All those guys kind of had an influence on how I coach and who I am today. So it was tough. Like grade 8, I didn't get to play on the team because again, it was out of my control. Struggled to try to fight for that in grade 8 or grade 9, and I was able to play in grade 9. And we had an amazing team. Bonds on those teams. Again, the friendships that I built on that with Nadoon, John, Timmy, all these guys, right? That's who. Those are the relationships that and how important it is to really build those relationships while you're playing sports, because it's lifelong relationships for the most part. I'm sure a lot of guys that are playing minor sports now, they're going to be in touch with these guys for the rest of their lives, 100%. So by the time I got to grade 10, or at the end of grade 9, was when I met Adrian Bowers, who's my role model, my mentor. He came to our school at Pleasant View and kind of gave like a demo of football, because we were all kind of getting ready for. We've all kind of been. Sorry, just reading some of these comments. My bad. So what was it? He came in. He was doing a demo with some of the grade 9s that were going into grade 10. Same age as us at Pleasant View, just kind of showing us the ropes of football, getting us ready for next year, exposing some of our guys so at least they can have an idea of what to expect. So that was football being my first kind of love, or being like something I was really passionate about. Kind of brought a lot of guys together, brought them out to this little MiniCamp, I guess, and it was awesome. We had a lot of ballers, man. We had a lot of ballers from Pleasant View that went over to Mac. And we learned a lot that day, and it definitely helped us when we got to grade 10 at McDonald, where we again met some of our friends that were just those relationships are going to go a long way. But so yeah, that's kind of like my quick background going into grade 10. But again, that controlling aspect of my family really kind of held me back. Like, we had a great season in grade 10 for football. I was barely able to play. Again, it was a struggle trying to convince my family to let me play. I was always like kind of taking care of my sister and being a part of her life and making sure she's getting taken care of, because again, she didn't really have the role model that she needed at a young age. And it definitely was rewarding to be there for her, but at the same time, like, I was missing out on a social life. I was missing out on my sports. I was missing out on just expressing myself through that outlet. So yeah, like I said, it was a struggle to convince them to let me play in grade 10. But man, it was awesome, because I remember we started off 3-0, had a hell of a team, a lot of good football players, a lot of guys who had experience playing football. Jake Kroom, Jeff Miller, Dylan Semenenko, Ian Hart, all those guys, man. Those guys taught me a lot, paved the way for me and all the Pleasant View guys who made us feel welcome. We had a hell of a team, man. 3-0 to start off, and then I remember going to Laurier, and we were 3-0. I think they were 0-3, or they were 1-3 or something. But they had Shaq. We knew who this guy was, and this guy alone, he literally like destroyed us. Like, I think we were down 2 scores at one point, and this is the biggest. I mean, one of the questions I'm going to ask our guys is like, what's 1 or 2 or a couple lessons that you've kind of learned through sport? And this is something that really sticks out in my mind. Is in that year we were losing to Laurier, right? It was maybe 2 scores down, and we were building some momentum, leading into pretty much the last drive of the second quarter, and the last play of the quarter, the last play of the first half, I decided to kind of talk to my quarterback and say I'm going to run a different route than what was called. And Bowers, he was our coach at the time, so he called all hooks, and we were chipping down the field, all hooks, and then eventually, I just said, like, all right, I'm going to run it out, and decided to run it out, and we ended up throwing an interception. And I definitely, we dealt with the repercussions, man. He gave it to us hard when it came to, telling us why we shouldn't be doing that, and it definitely taught me to trust the process, trust the people that are around you, because they trust in you, right? And that's something that I learned early on in sport, is just to kind of trust the process, and kind of go from there. But we ended up losing that game pretty bad. It wasn't good. We ended up having to do these terrible 20s afterwards. Some of you guys who played with me that year, you guys know what that is. That was awful. Coach K brought that up from the States, and damn, man, that was, some of you football guys probably know what those are, but I'm not even going to describe it. If you want to know what it is, go Google it, because obviously coaches kind of change things up based on that. But just think about doing 20 reps of something and going all the way down, and then running from one side of the field, then running back, doing 20, 19, 19, 18, 18, 17, 17, then running the full field in between that. And we had to go zero. We had to go all the way down to zero. So definitely didn't change the play. Didn't change any play for the rest of my football career, that's for sure. But yeah, so that's, my background, at least in high school, that's where it's at. We kind of dive into some other things outside of that, but I continued to be involved in football. Played at York University for a little bit. Made some great relationships with people there. That's what really got me into strength and conditioning, actually, is the relationship I built with the strength and conditioning coach, Dale LeBlanc, at that time. He kind of got in my ear in my second year there about how this is a potential career field for people who are passionate about it, and that was one of my passions, was coaching and educating. And coming out of high school, I always thought I would get down the teaching route. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. All I really wanted to do was play sports. Kind of got cold feet initially coming out of high school, in terms of my university choice. So I've been all over the place in terms of my background of education. I went to Humber for a semester, played rugby. Well, didn't actually play rugby. I had an injury at the time, but was part of the team there. Just again was struggling academically. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was still in radio broadcasting, out of all things. Thought I was going to get into sports broadcasting. Missed football. Reached out to the coaches that had recruited me from York, and they did a wonderful job getting me back in. Except the guy that was the main recruiter for me at the time, Mike Falls, he ended up leaving and going to Laurier. He got an amazing position, head coach over at Laurier after a few years of being pretty successful at York. So it again, struggling with that identity, because you came here, or I came back to York, and I, was trying to build relationships with people, and the coach that had given me the most attention coming out of high school was gone somewhere else. So again, struggling with that identity crisis. But my time at York was definitely valued. I learned a lot about football. I learned a lot about coaching. And again, that's where the bug was caught. I remember in my last year, I was really out of school. I didn't really give a crap about school. Don't take my advice. Don't be skipping school. Don't be not going to class when you get to university, college. Take care of your business. But I ended up starting to get into coaching more individuals. And my friend Craig Hansen, he was playing basketball over at Centennial, and he was asking me yo, I need to get stronger. I need to get faster, more explosive. I want to be able to dunk on guys. So I signed up for a community membership at Centennial College at that time, and just didn't really pay much attention to I did the bare minimum to finish my last year at York, because I'm a big believer in, you start something, you got to finish it. But went there and was helping Craig kind of develop from an athletic standpoint, and I was getting into Olympic lifting at that time, so he was kind of my guinea pig. I was able to try some things that had been working on me throughout high school and throughout the last few years, or my first few years out of high school. And Craig was great, man. He was like a robot. He was picking things up like that. He's a crazy good athlete, good at anything he does. So he was able to snatch overhead, no problem. Never really had any mobility issues. Really good at using his legs, using his hips to generate that force, generate that power. So it's cool to kind of see his beginning stages and my beginning stages as a coach. But yeah, and then I moved up to North Bay, studied strength and conditioning there. Was fortunate to meet some of my best friends, And it was just up there. It was just very fortunate of a program where like they pushed you into the community right away. I remember literally like week 1, they're telling you got to find an opportunity to coach because you got to start putting hours in towards your practicum hours. So I was lucky enough with my football background that I met a guy named Detlev, who's a really good friend of mine. He helped me out with connecting with the high school that he went to. And I studied history at York there, Aaron. Yeah, definitely not what... I was undecided for my first year, and in my second year I got into classical studies, ancient Greek and Roman history. I enjoyed that stuff, but just wasn't for me academically in terms of all the writing, all the reading. I'm not a big reading guy. I like to apply a lot of the knowledge and the stuff that I learned about. So yeah, I definitely had to make that transition. I really just, to be honest, I just felt like a number there, like 65,000 people at a campus, and like, yes, you're playing football and like you had your community and your guys that you were close with, but still, like, I was commuting to school too, so sometimes it was 2 hours to take the bus to get to school. You know, we got practice till 9 at night, 9:30 at night. I was lucky there was a guy that lived in Scarborough, Hussein Hazimi. This guy, man, saved a lot of time for me. He would drive me back to Victoria Park and Shepherd, and I would just get home from there. But yeah, like definitely made that transition into strength conditioning was pretty, you know, it was pretty easy because I was passionate about it. So getting involved with coaching high school football, getting involved with coaching after school weight training programs, West Ferris Secondary. I'm going to be forever grateful for that because that was memorable moments, stuff that I'll never forget. And again, relationships that I built with athletes at the time that I still connect with now. The coaches at the time too. Learned a lot from them. Learned a lot about preparation. Learned a lot about just putting in all that work when it comes to developing student athletes at a young age, and really learning the art side, learning how to build relationships. Like, I was kind of a fly on the wall with a lot of the stuff that I did there in my first year, and then kind of was given a little bit more responsibility into my second year to help with the offense a bit more. But like, just learning from Mark Robertson there, just about how to dial in and get focused, all that type of stuff just really transferred into my academic life and into my professional life now. And my second year in Canada, that's when we had to actually get out and do 300 hours of placement in our second semester. Moved to Hamilton with my best friend Brandon Wood. He was working at Guelph at the time. I was working at McMaster, and was given an opportunity to work with the guys preparing for the CFL Combine, and the guys preparing for the East-West Combine with Steve Lidstone. And that's when I really, like, Steve was a pioneer in terms of what he taught me, in terms of managing a staff, valuing a staff. I know I may have talked about this last week with Anil and I, but he showed me how to, like, really develop those deep relationships with the people that you're working with, because at the end of the day, we're all working towards the common goal. The athlete, the coaches, the interns, everybody's working towards the common goal, a better performance for the athlete. And they had to juggle a lot in university, right? They're playing university football. I was predominantly with football at McMaster, and that's a full-time job, like off season and in season. In season is even worse. You're pretty much putting in between practices, meetings, and then studying and balancing your academic load. That's a 65 hour week. Like, it's no joke. If you don't live on campus, you know, it's tough because you're commuting, you're moving, you're spending a lot of time on transit or whatever else. But so being able to kind of help those guys transition and help them balance things was definitely something that I saw from Steve. He was really on the mental side of things as well, where he was checking in with his guys, checking in with his staff, making sure everybody's staying focused, and not only that, just keeping things tight knit within the community. So forever grateful for my opportunities there with Steve. But yeah, that's kind of, overestimated background of where I'm at. But some of the other questions that we're going to be asking, I kind of talked about this. What was the first sport you were exposed to, and at what age? I talked about soccer and track. What was one of the sports you fell in love with? Well, I fell in love with basketball first and foremost, and I always wanted to be like Steve Nash growing up. So that's definitely Steve Nash. Yep, Steve Lidstone is definitely the GOAT. That's for sure. And I kind of talked about the most important lesson that I've learned through sport is definitely to trust the process, control the things that you can control. Some of the other questions that we're going to be getting into with some of our guests is a little bit more personal. We just kind of let it flow. If questions come up in the moment, definitely going to ask them. But some examples are like, what are some other ways? Like I said, with Anil and I, we're going to be talking more about the training side of things, the science behind training, and here we're going to be talking more about the art, the communication aspects of things, the non-physical traits to kind of develop. So what are some other ways that, the question I'll be asking is, what are some other ways that you train for your sport? A lot of different athletes, they get involved in strength conditioning, speed training, and even playing other sports. Like, I'm a big advocate for multisport athletes, I think, and you can see it around now. People are talking about it more often, especially since Pat Mahomes won the Super Bowl and the MVP. Like, he was a triple sport athlete in college. So that's about about time to Rose, yeah. So yeah, that multi-sport athlete aspect of things is certainly important, because you develop so many other aspects of being an athlete while playing other sports. Like, if you're playing football and then you're playing basketball, you're developing spatial awareness, agility, quickness, all that type of stuff while you're playing the sport. Not to say you need to only be playing sports. Like, you obviously have to take into consideration the strength and conditioning side of things. And I was fortunate enough at a young age to see value in that. Again, I mentioned my friend Shaq. His dad was a strength conditioning coach along with Ian Mortar. And they got me involved in strength conditioning in grade 10, and I saw the value. And I was working some part-time jobs at the time, and really, paying my own way for training. But I mean, those guys really dialed in everything. Good night, Anna. I'll see you tomorrow. All right? Yeah. Yeah. So Ian and Kevin, they're the goats too. I got to give them a lot of credit, because they paved the way for us, all of us that were involved in training at a young age, to really kind of, and we trained with them grade 10, 11, 12, and then kind of went our own ways, because everybody kind of graduated. I stayed an extra year in high school, so I kind of took the things that Ian and Kevin were teaching me on the track and in the weight room, tried to apply it to myself in my last year in high school, with guidance from my football coaches there, Adrian and Driscoll. They were definitely a big part of my last year of high school in terms of my development. And so yeah, that's some ways that I trained for my sport, was getting in the weight room and getting on the track at an early age, because that's what I knew. I wanted to improve my performance in football, and I knew that lifting weights, and I knew that running on the track would get you faster. And proof is in the pudding. Track and football should get married, hands down. Two sports that I would always tell guys, like, if you're not going to pick another sport, at least try to run track or do field. Like, the shot put events are amazing for that power development as well. So get involved in multiple sports. I think it's very, very important. And then another question we might ask these guys are any strategies you have when it comes to developing the mental side of sport. Like I said, the non-physical physical traits to develop, accountability, work ethic, consistency, perseverance. I was having a conversation with my man Logan the other day about those things and how important it is to that lays the foundation. If you don't have any of that stuff, if you don't have accountability or consistency or even a work ethic, like, that's talent sets the floor, but character, that sets the ceiling. You got to have all those other things in place, and sports certainly gives you an opportunity to develop those things. You deal with adversity if you're down in a game and you're trying to come back, make a comeback. So that's the perseverance, right? You're coming through, you're setting goals, and you're holding yourself accountable. You're developing that accountability in the weight room, right? You're getting up in the morning, you're taking care of your sleeping, your nutrition, and that's consistency. So developing those non-physical traits is very, very important as well. Yeah, that's I know probably was a little bit longer than well, half hour. That's where I kind of wanted to be at. But who's this? Dan wanted to come on here, eh? Well, yeah, we'll bring him on for a little bit. Anyways, yeah. So we're looking to bring some cool guests onto this show. Different sports: basketball, rugby, track and field, weightlifting, powerlifting, strongman, and so much more, right? And hopefully, again, like, we can talk about all the lessons that they've learned, their experiences through sport, and again, hopefully, guys and girls can draw some inspiration from that, and hopefully pay it forward and pave the way for some other people as well. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys again.